Hello everyone, welcome back. This is Dr. Gevrek. We are learning about labor economics today. We are in the labor market discrimination chapter. This is part 8. If you haven't seen it, please watch the previous parts. Number 1. Number 2, if you haven't subscribed to this channel yet, do subscribe. Number 2, hit the like button on this video so that other students who need to see these videos and learn more about labor economics and do better in their classes get to see it. Okay, let's get started. So this is the black and white wage ratio, the determinants of this. Let's take a look. So in 1999, black population earned 21% less than the white population, okay? And the black-white earnings ratio was 0.79, right? 21% less. Today, it's the same, okay? There has been an upward trend in the wages of black workers in recent years. So this is, okay, this has been attributable to the increase in the quality of black schooling. So education levels go up, the wages go up. Government programs also have positively, although limited, affected black workers' wages. So is this discrimination or is this other things? Economists use regression analysis. So they control for education of the individual, age, gender, region of residence, right? Living in San Francisco versus Mississippi is going to have different wages. Occupational choices and industry choices. Okay, so what we do, if you have taken an econometrics class or if you have taken statistics class, you know about ordinary least squares regression. What we do is that we grab wages as a dependent variable, left-hand side variable, alpha 0, alpha 1, right? Those are parameters to be estimated. Education, years of education. We include the age of person because we learned about age earnings profile, right? As we age, earnings go up, but after a while, they start going down. Gender, men get paid more. Region of residence, and we also have dummy for black. Okay, if the individual is black versus 0 otherwise. So can we distinguish the impact of discrimination and other observable differences? So maybe there's no discrimination. I'm not saying it. Maybe discrimination is limited. So is this basically there's discrimination? Okay, we cannot deny it. However, it varies by regions. It varies by the level of education, so on and so forth. But look at this. 1% gap. Is this all coming from discrimination or is it due to different characteristics? Of course, schooling. If there's limited schooling of black individuals, so that's also an inequality, right? That comes from somewhere. Why is the average education of different groups is different? Hispanic people, why Hispanic population schooling is much less than white group, or why is Asian group schooling is much higher? Okay, so going back. So this is Ron Oaxaca. I don't know if you know it, but my sister is a PhD professor of economics as well. She has PhD from University of Arizona. And her advisor was Ron Oaxaca. He's a pretty cool guy. And he's very famous for his Oaxaca decomposition. So he invented a decomposition, and we are using a non-parametric version of it in current research. So it's a little bit deeper than regression analysis. Long story short, you can actually decompose the differences in any two groups, right? Based on observable characteristics and based on what you can attribute to, for instance, discrimination. So when he looked at the raw log wage differential, right? When you look at the logarithm wage differentials, that gives you percentage differences. So when you look at raw log wage differentials, he found black Americans on an average make 21% less than white counterparts. So the second row shows you due to differences in skills. Okay, so when we say skills, we are now controlling for education, age, gender, region of residence. So after controlling for all these, because more if black population is less educated, right, individuals less educated, they're going to make less. If they're female, they're going to make less. Age, acts differently. Region of residence is going to matter too. So after controlling for these differences in skills, actually out of this 21.1% of raw differences in wages, about 8.2% comes from the observed characteristics, all these characteristics, okay? So what's the rest? Rest comes from, this one comes from discrimination, 13.4%. But further, Ronaldo controls for also occupation, right? How do people sort into occupation? So if white population or non-black people sort more into managerial jobs, they sort more into high-paying occupations and industries, then some of the differences will come from that. So 21% of the gap again, raw differences. So 11.4 of these differences can be explained by all these skill differences plus changes in, hold on. So 11.4 comes from, right, 21.1% raw differences. So 11.4% is explained by observable characteristics such as occupation, sorting, education, so on and so forth. So the rest is attributable to the discrimination, 9.8%. So you still see a 9.8% differences between comparable black and white wages differences. Okay, so this is the trend in black and white earnings ratio from 67 till today. This is the woman. So this is when you look at black versus white woman. This is black versus white men. So black-white wage ratio increased for men in the last 45 years. As you can see, black men made 65% of what white men did back in 1960s. And today it's about, it's about 79 these days actually. And for women, it's little different. Again, you've seen an improvement in the economic status of black men, but still we haven't reached to the full potential. But also, unfortunately, this corresponds to the mass incarceration of black men. So for instance, in Arizona in 90s, 2000s, half of the working age population was incarcerated at least once. Black men. It's a lot. So when you move those black men out of labor market, what happens is that you actually have limited number of black men in the population, in civilian population. Black-white wage ratio for women rose rapidly from 67-75, but it slowed in the 80s and 90s. So there's a huge increase here, catching up, almost caught up, more than 90%. But now there has been a slowdown and mild decline, okay? So relative wage of both black men and black women are higher today than was in 1960s. But again, 1960s, what are we talking about? For instance, 1967 is the year actually last 16 states struck down their laws saying that black and white people cannot get married. So these are very, very dark times in our history. And I say our history, even though I am of Turkish ancestry, I'm American. Long story short, folks, we can do better for every group. Hispanics, blacks, women, we can do much better. Okay? Okay, why are the economic status of black populations improving? Relative improvement, right? I'm not saying it's perfect, but it's been improving. So it's one reason is increasing level of education. At least half of the increasing black-white wage ratio is due to this. In 1940s, so these are very darker times, A 30-year-old black man had 6 years of education. Black woman had 9.9 years of schooling. Today, not today, 1980s, 30-year-old black man more than doubled education. Woman, some college, right? Almost associate degree. So another reason why there has been an improvement, gap in black and white schooling quality shrank. So the schools attended, there has been a convergence, okay? So of course, it's still not perfect. So what we look at is pupil-teacher ratio, okay? 1920s in the South, 50% higher for black. So what happened is that you have high pupil-teacher ratio that is low quality. That means there's so many students per teacher. So in the South of 20s, in the black, it was completely segregated, right? So in black schools, it was 50% higher. That's a lot. In 1950s, quality differences disappeared in terms of pupil-teacher ratio. Of course, integration it's still, even though it says disappeared, I believe this is a strong statement. We still have gaps in schooling, huge gaps, but still the quality differences are smaller. I cannot say disappeared. Gap in returns to education between black and white populations. The gap was positive, right? Then it became negative now. So in 1940s, this is the returns to schooling by race. Each year of schooling return was 9.8% higher earnings. For black individuals, each year of schooling was only 4.7%. In 1970s, 8.5% for white population. For black population, years of schooling return was 9.6%. Today, I believe they are similar, but I believe today white returns to schooling is higher. So it's not a perfect, increase. So decrease in black labor force participation rate. This is a big sad thing. So black schooling distribution, right? So those who are the least educated, unfortunately, this is schooling. They are more likely to be incarcerated. Not only schooling, but also being racially targeted in some groups. But what happened is that this mass incarceration of black men who are incarcerated, I'm talking about frequency, believe me. Even if you're super educated, you could be target to incarceration based on small crimes. Okay, so it could be small infractions and you're more likely to be detained, even though you're not incarcerated. Anyways, least skilled people, least schooling, are more susceptible to be incarcerated, so they're not in the labor force. 1/3 of the black-white wage improvement is due to this. This is really sad, right? So the least skilled ones are locked up, so you are seeing an improvement, but it's little bit heavy. So in 1950s, black-white labor force participation gap was 0. That means both black and white men participated in the market 85%. By 2010, black-white labor force participation rate gap is 7%. That means white workers 72% labor force participation rate versus 65% for black men. Part of the improvement in black-white ratio is due to affirmative action, but affirmative action has been limited, to say the least. Okay, so this is a male labor force participation rates by race. Labor force participation rates has been declining for men has been declining for every ethnic racial group, but as you can see, black male labor force participation rate decline is steeper. This is due to disproportionate incarceration of black men. Okay, so let's talk about affirmative action in a nutshell. In 1964, starts with the Civil Rights Act, prohibits employment discrimination based on race and gender. After these years, in recent years, of course, the age comes into play and other other protected group comes in. 1960s Executive Order 11246, Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, right, is declared that government contractors prohibited from discrimination. So if you have at least $50,000 in contracts and 50 employees, you have to file annual report of total employment by occupation, gender, and race. Okay? Affirmative action affected employment. So in 1966, Black group are less likely, 10% less likely to be employed by federal contractors. In 1980, Black workers are more likely to work for federal contractors. So it did have little bit impact. But did affirmative action affect Black wages? There's no consensus, so it's not a really strong tool, but it's something. Recent evidence shows indirect effect, not direct effect, but indirect effect. Affirmative action program for federal employment affected larger firms. So larger firms tend to pay more, they have better benefits. So 15% improvement in the white wage ratio comes due to affirmative action. It's supposed to be ratio, not ratio. Okay, folks, I will see you in part 9, where we'll talk about labor market discrimination for other groups, Asian and Hispanic groups. I'll see you then.